Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we're going to talk about Ratchet and Clank. Tyler, this is your baby.
Oh,
let's watch it all grow up together.
Oh my goodness. I love Ratchet and Clank so much. So I'm going to continue a bit of a trend here and keep talking about mascot platformers. I talked about Sonic in my last two sections, and now I'm going to talk about Ratchet and Clank. I can't help it. My history with video games is just littered with these type of games, and I just love them. So I'm a little sad they aren't made very often anymore, but also that's okay because I don't really need my memories to be tarnished by new games being made in this genre, you know?
Dude, I feel like this is our childhood, though, so people got to respect it. You got to respect our childhood. I promise next week to not do a platformer.
Okay. I
will not do a 90s mascot platformer, I promise.
I was very excited for Yooka-Laylee when that was announced and put on Kickstarter because it was like all the original people that made Banjo-Kazooie, which is probably another game I'll eventually do an episode on, but it was just not very good. Although I hear their new game, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, which is like a 2D platformer, like in the style of Donkey Kong Country. I hear that's pretty good. So,
ooh, I'm excited
to check that out.
You got me with the Donkey Kong Country comparison. Yep. Ooh,
all right, but we're talking about Ratchet and Clank today. So, as a series, the Ratchet and Clank games fit squarely into the action platform genre, but they have a heavy emphasis on guns and weapons. Generally, you go from world to world fighting aliens and stopping some sort of crazy scheme. They're pretty goofy and funny. There's a whole bunch of weird characters, and overall, the game just does not take itself too seriously. I mean, each game has a gun that turns your enemies into some sort of animal. Like the first game has a gun that turns enemies into chickens. The second game has a gun that turns enemies into sheep, and the third game turns them into ducks. So this is a pretty weird game series.
I'm into all those things, though. Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
So the series started in the early days of the PlayStation 2, but it has found a home on all of Sony's platforms in one way or another, except for the PS Vita. No, that's actually not true. It is on the PS Vita. Insomniac generally doesn't develop games for other platforms besides the PlayStation, except for Sunset Overdrive on the Xbox One. But as of 2019, they're fully owned by Sony, so they'll probably never make another game for another platform ever again, unless they do what Bungie did and spin off from Microsoft, or spin off from Sony. Bungie spun off from Microsoft. Insomniac would have to spin off of Sony. Okay, so on to the genesis of Ratchet and Clank.
I was getting your spin metaphor. I liked it.
Thank you. In the late 1990s, Insomniac had made a series of video games for the original PlayStation called the Spyro the Dragon series. I don't know if you're familiar with that series, Mike.
Adorable little purple dragon. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. They were very fun, colorful, cute platforming games. They felt a lot like Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, games like that. If you were into Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, these were sort of the counterparts to that on the PlayStation. You had your Crash Bandicoots, you had your Spyro the Dragons, and so the three games that released on the PlayStation 1, Spyro the Dragon, and then Spyro the Dragon Ripto's Rage, and then Year of the Dragon, were all pretty well received, and Insomniac did pretty well with those. The problem was, those games were made in conjunction with Universal Studios, who actually owned the rights to Spyro as a character and as an intellectual property. So, after all of their success, Insomniac wanted to move on to something else that they could have better control over.
That makes me... I did not know that Spyro was owned by Universal Studios.
Yeah, that's why you see in the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox era, and I think maybe even into the PlayStation 3, there are some Spyro the Dragon games that are not made by Insomniac, so they're very different. They sort of have a different group of people they're I don't want to say pandering to, but yeah, pandering to. They're just very different from the original games. I think they still do pretty good, and nowadays they're the basis for the Skylanders series. I think Spyro is a pretty big part of that, and that's a whole thing because it has all the miniatures and like kids love that stuff, I guess.
Here's my question. Where's my Spyro the Dragon roller coaster? Universal Studios. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, they really goofed by not doing that.
It's a big mess up. I'm going to send them a heated email.
Good. I await the results.
Business professional. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Insomniac wanted to move on from that because they had a lot of success with Spyro, but didn't own the IP, and they were like, you know what? We should make something new that we can control and have own the IP for. So, after trying out a few different things, including a space lizard with a tail, they eventually landed on Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet is a humanoid cat-like character called a Lombax, and supposedly the last of his kind in the first game, or is he? maybe not.
We're jumping into spoil territory, I feel like.
I get heavy into some spoilers here, so if you haven't played these 20-year-old games, I don't know what to tell you.
I have not, and I'm going to get very upset with you. I'm just kidding.
Clank is a defective robot fresh off the assembly line of the bad guys in the first game. So like he's like a robot that's supposed to be a really giant robot that just destroys things and is generally bad, but he's like a really small runt robot that falls off the assembly line and finds his way to Ratchet. And he fits on Ratchet's back like a backpack, and he has all kinds of cool things like jets and helicopter propellers and stuff that generally help Ratchet do jumpy things.
I didn't know about that, and that's the most adorable thing I've ever heard in this podcast, I think.
Yeah, Clank is pretty great. So let's talk about that first game, Ratchet and Clank. I love this game. I love all these games, so I'm just going to keep saying that. But this one plants the seeds for the future Ratchet games. But the first one is actually pretty simple in nature. So the story is about Ratchet, a cocky Lombax who's pretty good at fixing mechanical things. When Clank escapes the robot factory on the planet Quartu, he crash lands on Ratchet's home planet of Veldin and enlists Ratchet help to stop Chairman Drek, the leader of the Blargians. That's the bad guys are the Blarg.
The Blarg.
The Blarg. You see, the Blargians are a planet of rich business people, and they have ruined their planet. Social commentary.
Whoa, yeah, this is getting real Wall-E style social commentary. I'm into it.
Yes.
Good for them.
So in order to survive, they've started harvesting other planets in order to combine them to make themselves a new home. Naturally, this is not going to fly with Ratchet and Clank, who meet up with Captain Quark, a superhero celebrity kind of person. He's a great character because he plays like this heroic superhero on TV. He's actually not a very heroic person. He's cowardly. He's really only out to help himself. But he puts on a tough exterior, and he wants people to actually think that he's the person that he plays on TV. He's great comedic relief for the whole series. Love me some Captain Quark. Anyway, they destroy Drek's operations on every planet and eventually defeat Drek himself, and there is much rejoicing. Yay!
Hooray!
Pretty simple storyline there. There is some betrayal by Captain Quark. You find out later that he wants to help Chairman Drek because he's going to be paid to be the spokesperson of this new planet, so he wants that endorsement deal.
You know what? This is getting better and better.
So yeah, the stories are simple, but they're surprisingly clever in a lot of areas. They're just like you watch it and you just kind of laugh to yourself a little bit. You're like, that's pretty funny. But the game controls much like the 3D platformers of the era, especially like Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy. Interestingly, when Insomniac started working on Ratchet and Clank, Naughty Dog, the developers of Jak and Daxter series, contacted them and asked if they wanted to use some of the technology that they had developed for Jak and Daxter. The only condition was Insomniac had to share any improvements they made to the tech back with Naughty Dog, which ended up being a pretty cool partnership between these companies. So they were both second-party Sony developers, so while they were kind of in competition with each other, it was more advantageous for them to help each other out, which I think is really nice. And there's a lot of Easter eggs between the two games, where you'll see like Jak and Daxter in Ratchet and Clank games, and you'll see Ratchet and Clank in Jak and Daxter games. It's a common misconception that Ratchet and Clank runs on the same engine as the Naughty Dog games do. It doesn't. They still run on their own set of proprietary technology, but there's a lot of graphics rendering technologies that Naughty Dog had developed that Insomniac used in Ratchet and Clank series. So
that's good. I'm glad you put that debate to bed right now. To bed.
Yeah, I'm tired of seeing all these people be wrong on the internet, so I need to correct them. You know.
You know what? And I feel like a lot of them feel the same way.
Probably right. Ratchet and Clank was released in November of 2002, and it got a lot of great reviews. Reviewers especially liked the focus on weapons in the game. So platformers at this time were generally limited to melee attacks, maybe some segments of the game where you could use like kind of a ranged weapon. But Ratchet and Clank was built entirely around this crazy arsenal of awesome weapons where the weapons were almost like characters in their own right in the game. The platforming was very solid, the controls were tight, and the game ran smooth as butter most of the time. Speaking of weapons, though, I remember the ads for this game. Do you remember the ads for the Ratchet and Clank games?
I kind of do, yeah. I think I do. And it was lame because, I was not really a PlayStation kid at this time. My brother had a PS2, and it was like his, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was we had a war of consoles going where I had an original Xbox, and he had a PlayStation 2, and we just stayed separate the whole time, which is upsetting, you know?
Yeah, it's too bad. You could have been cross-pollinating, playing each other's games.
We really could have. I did play a couple games on his PlayStation 2, but he never really played games on my Xbox.
Wow.
No.
So sad. But these commercials were so funny. They were filmed in like a home movie style. They kind of almost had like a Jackass vibe to them. Like, you remember that show from the early 2000s? That was
very much do.
Yeah. It was pretty popular at the time, so this style of commercial was pretty good. It was always like regular people getting ready to try out one of the guns from Ratchet and Clank, and then they would use it, and then it would like explode and cause a bunch of... Yeah. My favorite one is the one for the Morpho Ray, where they're like, okay, so we're going to test out the Morpho Ray from Ratchet and Clank, and we're going to use it on Jerry here. And Jerry's like, he starts talking. He's like, oh, so am I going to be able to turn back from a chicken? And then they press a button and he just turns into a chicken immediately. And they just start laughing and chasing him around.
I'm watching this commercial right now. I have it. I was pulling it up as you were talking, and then like the Morpher Ray, and it's like the Morpher Ray is the one I clicked on.
So funny.
I haven't pressed play yet. I don't want to get distracted in the podcast.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like, oh, it worked. Jerry's a chicken. And they're like chasing him around the yard and stuff. And they're all like that, where they like hit the button to launch the rocket or whatever, and like it just blows up everything, and they just look at the camera and they're just like laughing the whole time. It's so funny. I love those commercials.
Dude, I like two kinds of video game commercials. You ready? Hot take.
Okay.
I like the serious Gears of War kind, where they have the song that doesn't necessarily fit.
Yep.
But it kind of works. There was also a game called Dante's Inferno that would play Ain't No Sunshine. That song played.
Yeah.
During the you remember this commercial?
I think so, yeah.
It was on TV. And I like that kind of commercial where like, you know, like Mad World doesn't really fit with like the Gears of War vibe, but it works. I like that. And I like very ridiculous and funny. And I'm thinking Ratchet and Clank. I'm thinking Destiny original, where like the live action Guardians are like going out there. Or Call of Duty, where they get like all the celebrities to be in the commercial as playing in the game. Yeah, those are good commercials.
Oh, man.
It's a lukewarm take for you, I think.
No, it was a hot take.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the Ratchet and Clank here. About 5 months before the release of the first game, Insomniac got approval to start on the sequel. So the first game hadn't even come out yet, and Insomniac was like, we're starting the next one. So apparently the game was doing so well in the test groups that they had, they knew that they had a hit. So they began to work on the next game before the first one was even finished.
That's a good, risky strategy they got going on there.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when like a movie or a video game has the sequel in development before the first one comes out. It makes a little bit of sense. Like if you've made one and then you've greenlit two sequels for the first one after the first one does so well, you're just sure you can make two more sequels. Like that makes sense to me. But like the whole like this movie's not even out yet, but we're already making a sequel to it, just blows my mind and is crazy risk taking in my eyes. But maybe that's why I'm not a movie executive.
You know what? But I think you could be. Just gonna say that.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so they started working on the second one, and then 10 months later, they finished in time for a November 2003 release. So we're on kind of a yearly schedule here for Ratchet and Clank games at this point in time.
Whoa, that's nuts!
Yeah,
like that's so much work to get all that done.
Yeah, the yearly release thing, like Call of Duty does that now, but they're staggered between development studios, so each game has like 2 or 3 actual years of work on it. But not Ratchet and Clank, man. They were cranking those things out. I think the Jak and Daxter series was like that too, and the Sly Cooper series. They were just every year they were each putting out a new one, which is crazy to me. But
I wanted to do, and this is going to be kind of a very inside baseball topic, and I don't know if we're ever going to actually do it. I wanted to do a topic on the history of video game development, because I feel like now we kind of know that there's some very serious problems with it as far as like developers getting exhausted, you know, and you hear stories like that from even relatively newer 2003 where they're doing this and flipping games that fast. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a different time back then, because I think games didn't require quite as much work to put together as they do now, but still. That's still a short amount of time.
There was a guy, and this is a small tangent, but there was a guy that shared a room in LA with me. I essentially Airbnb'd our apartment room after the roommate moved out suddenly, and he worked on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I want to say, or Advanced War, one of those ones, okay? And he was never home Like he was gone like 18 hours a day.
Jeez.
Was his work day. Yeah, it was insane. And it was like 3 months before the game came out, and he just moved there. And he's like, yeah, I get breakfast, lunch, and dinner all on them, and they just pay for this apartment for me, but I'm never really home. He would be home on the weekends, and that was it. It was so crazy. And he did like modeling, like 3D modeling for the people, I think, like the NPCs.
Yeah.
So crazy. Just a weird life. And he would get laid off after the game's out, and he's like, yeah, I just jump game to game. I'm like, he's getting paid tons of money, but yikes, 18 hours, that's your whole life essentially for 3 months is that game.
Yeah, that's the worst part about that kind of stuff is the game comes out and then people get laid off and it's like, oh man, you just work them to the bone and then they didn't even have a job after they were done. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. But not to get into the politics of video game development, let's get back to Ratchet and Clank.
So the second Ratchet and Clank game was called Going Commando. So Ratchet and Clank Going Commando. But it was only called that in the United States. Most areas opted to call it Locked and Loaded or just Ratchet and Clank 2, mostly because the term Going Commando, while it could refer to something like a military commando, which sort of fits with the weapons and that kind of stuff going on there in the storyline of Ratchet and Clank. It's also used in English to describe someone who isn't wearing underwear. So I guess that was a little bit too suggestive for areas outside of the United States. And it wouldn't be the last time that a Ratchet game would have a suggestive title. It was kind of going to be their shtick for a few years after this. They were going to have titles where you're just like, wait, what? You can make a video game title that?
I think it's funny. I think
it's funny too.
It makes me laugh. It's so innocent. It's so silly when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's like not even a sexual thing. It's just a silly thing, not wearing underwear, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So Going Commando was also awesome. I mean the game, not the practice of going commando.
You heard it first, folks, from Tyler's mouth.
The game was very awesome. Again, we follow our protagonists, Ratchet and Clank, on a planet-hopping journey, this time to catch a thief who has stolen the, and I'm doing air quotes here, pet project of Abercrombie Fizzwidget, the founder and CEO of Megacorp. Eventually, it's revealed that the thief is an ex-employee of Megacorp who stole the project because it was a danger to the galaxy. Fizzwidget eventually gets the project back, he starts selling it on the market to people, and then it gets revealed that Fizzwidget is actually Captain Quark, who thought he'd be able to save the galaxy from the Protopet and be a hero. So it was called the Protopet. So his plan was to sell this thing, put it on the market, and then when it did bad things, Captain Quark would be able to come along and be the hero to save it all. So Captain Quark always trying to make himself look good here. He uses a device that he thought was going to stop the Protopet, but it accidentally makes it huge, and then Ratchet has to save him. It's very funny and hilarious. And then peace is restored to the galaxy when they use Megacorp's TV signals to broadcast a signal that stops the Protopets from eating everyone and everything. And Captain Quark is punished for his crimes by becoming a test subject for the newest Megacorp product, the Crotchetizer, which does not sound awesome.
Are these games rated teen? They have to be rated
yes,
teen.
They are.
That's
the first
fantastic.
three are rated. The first four are rated teen. After that, the E10 rating came out, and so they would be rated E10. But the early ones are the ones that have the really suggestive stuff like the Crotchetizer.
This just makes me feel like the people that were writing this game were having fun, and that makes me happy.
They were having so much fun. So yeah. So the gameplay of Going Commando is everything you loved about the first game, but just better. Ratchet now gains experience points as he fights enemies and uses weapons, which causes him to gain more health as the game goes on. And every weapon in the game has an upgraded form that makes it do more damage and fundamentally changes the weapon in some way. And you get that upgraded weapon by just using it. So as the weapon gains experience points, it gets stronger too. It's really awesome because it gives you incentive to use all of the weapons you might not normally use in game. So I don't know about you, Mike, but in games like this, I tend to find the weapon that I like and then just spam that the whole game. I don't know
if exactly like me.
Yeah, that's how I roll. But in Going Commando, it's better to spread it out and max out all of the guns because they're so creative and fun. And who doesn't like watching progress bars go up?
It's true. It's my favorite thing in video games.
I like shooting aliens. I like watching progress bars go up, and that's why I'm a Destiny addict.
That's right. Me too.
Yeah. So some of my favorite weapons from Going Commando, we got the Lancer, which is like a standard blaster, upgrades to the Heavy Lancer, and then the Mega Heavy Lancer in challenge mode. So there's a challenge mode after you beat the game that lets you upgrade the weapons one more time, which is pretty cool. You've got the Lava Gun. It shoots lava. It's very satisfying, and it's great for killing lots of small enemies that are like all around you. It upgrades into the Meteor Gun, which fires meteors. Then you've got the biggest gun, the Zodiac. And ammo for this gun costs 10,000 bolts each, which is really expensive, and it literally just destroys everything on the screen. Like, just everything just disappears.
We got the Zodiac gun, and it fires the Zodiac killer, jumps out of the gun, and starts killing all the enemies on the screen. It's got really dark all of a sudden.
It's really weird. Yeah. And then you've got the Rhino 2, which is an upgraded Rhino from the first game. So the first game, for like 1,000,000 bolts or something, has this weapon called the Rhino, which it's RYNO, and it stands for Rip Ya New One. And it just launches tons of rockets everywhere and just kills everything. It's great. And then my personal favorite gun is the Blitz gun, which fires kind of a shotgun-like blast, good for hitting enemies that are up close and personal. Upgrades to the Blitz cannon, which is the same thing, just better. So, yeah. I loved this game, and critics loved it too. Pretty much everyone unanimously agreed that everything the first game did, this game does better. It's got more varied levels with fun mini games, new weapons that you can upgrade, and an all-new control scheme that puts guns first. So there's a first-person mode, but it's bad. Don't use it. But there is like they call it lock strafe mode, where it's more like a standard third-person shooter would be today. So you're like left and right is strafing, and then you use the right joystick to move the camera around.
Oh, it
was pretty cool. It would be standard nowadays, but it was kind of a big deal when this game came out because most games didn't have a control scheme like that, especially if they were games that considered themselves to be platformers. Like, I don't think the Jak and Daxter series ever got a control scheme like that, even though the second and third games would be much more weapon focused than the first. They also changed Ratchet's character to be a little bit less pompous and annoying, and they changed his voice actor to match. So in the first game, he's like not a very likable character. He's just kind of a jerk, and he's not great. But in Going Commando, they changed it so he's a little bit more likable, and they changed his voice actor to James Arnold Taylor, which is the same guy that voices Tidus in Final Fantasy X.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and he continues to be the voice actor.
I've played Final Fantasy X, so now I gotta find a clip of this guy's voice and listen to it.
Yep. So he's been the voice actor ever since Going Commando, and I think he's way better than the original guy.
You know what? That's good they did that, though, because no one likes a protagonist that's mean.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to love if he's mean and annoying and sarcastic.
It's true. This was also the first game I ever got a Platinum Trophy on. The PS3 remake of this game is perfect, and the best way to play all three of the games in the original trilogy. You can get the Ratchet and Clank collection for PS3 that has the first three games, all in HD and widescreen and high frame rates and stuff. I got the Platinum Trophy on this game, and I got a Platinum Trophy on Jak and Daxter. Those are the only two Platinum Trophies I have, and they're not even for PS3 games.
But you know what? I'm proud of you, okay?
Thanks.
Regardless.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
It's a supportive atmosphere here.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. All right. So at this point in time, Insomniac was really firing on all cylinders. It was just 1 year later, in November of 2004, when they released Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, which is also pretty suggestive. So this game takes everything that was awesome about the first two games and just continues to make it better. So we've got our same two guys, Ratchet and Clank, going through a bunch of different planets, trying to stop Dr. Nefarious from turning the galaxy into robots. They, along with Captain Quark, assemble the Q-Force, which consists of Quark, Ratchet, Clank, and the pro hoverboarder named Skid McMarks from the first game.
Oh, these are delightful.
It's pretty goofy. This game has some pretty neat stuff going on. So levels now have like missions to choose from instead of just wandering the planet completing objectives. There's a cool kind of military vibe to a lot of the game where you're assisting forces as they fight back the Tyrannoid invasion. Also, some levels have like a skydiving section where you skydive in, which is super neat. And when I first played the game, I was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I thought skydiving scenes were like the freaking coolest thing.
That's so fun. And then you got to playing battle royales, and then they ruined it for everybody.
Yeah. Yep. Well, life's hard. There's a bunch of new weapons and gadgets in this game with a few classics brought back from earlier games. The Quacko Ray is very fun because it turns enemies into ducks, and instead of sheep or chickens like in the last game. The Suck Cannon also returns, which allows you to suck enemies in and then shoot them back at other enemies. So I like using that weapon in conjunction with the Quacko Ray because sucking in the ducks is way better than some of the other enemies. So it's like you vacuum clean up the screen, and then once the cannon is full, you shoot them out at whatever's left. It's very fun.
That's awesome. Man, it seems just like really creative, fun ways to have guns in a game.
Yeah. It is great. Big fan. Okay, so weapons you can upgrade again this time, just like in Going Commando, but this time they go up to level 5 in the main game, getting bigger and badder as they go, and then 3 more levels can be upgraded when you play the game in challenge mode. So you want to play this game again so you can watch your progress bars keep going up as you kill more aliens. It's great.
Getting better and better and better and better.
Yeah, but that's not even the biggest new feature. By far, the biggest new feature to up your arsenal was the inclusion of multiplayer. And I don't just mean split screen, play with your friends multiplayer, although that is there too. I'm talking online multiplayer, which is a pretty big deal for console games in the early 2000s. So Xbox Live had just come out a couple years earlier, but online multiplayer was still kind of a novelty for console games at the time. And since in 2004, my family finally got high-speed internet at a whole 1 megabit per second, blazing fast, I was able to play this game online.
Future.
I know. I was, because upgrading from dial-up to that was, it was mind-blowing. It was the greatest thing.
Look at all these web pages I can load.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I could actually play games online. So I played this game online, and it didn't require any kind of subscription. So I also thought that I was cooler than those chumps over there paying for Xbox Live on their Xboxes. That's you, Mike. You were a chump paying for Xbox Live on your Xbox.
I was a chump. Was this Xbox 360 days or Xbox original days still?
Original days.
Then I was not a chump because I did not get Xbox Live until Xbox 360 era.
All right.
Chump free since 2003.
That's a good rhyme. I like that.
Thank you.
So at this time I was like, yeah, PS2 clearly better because they don't have to pay for online.
I forgot that was their thing.
Yeah.
It was like, you don't have to pay for it. It's free. It's included service. I forgot they did that. And then they were like, okay, Microsoft's making a butt ton of money with Halo. We have to start charging people for this.
Yeah, they kept it free even into the PS3 era. And then it was like once the PS4 started rolling around, they were like, okay, maybe we can charge. Microsoft has proven that people will pay for this, so we can charge them too, which is kind of a bummer.
And I like to think of Microsoft, they're just jumping into giant rooms full of money a la Scrooge McDuck style. Well,
yeah,
Sony's
definitely
thinking about it.
So the multiplayer for Up Your Arsenal had Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Capture a Flag, and my personal favorite, Siege Mode, which was like the goal of Siege Mode was to like capture control points and then destroy the enemy's base. And then in the attrition modifier for Siege Modes, the more nodes on the map you captured made your base defenses stronger, so you wanted to capture as many points as you can to win. And it was really fun. There's like cool firefights that would break out around each node, and it had most of the weapons from the single player game, which is all very creative and fun. It reminded me a lot of the Onslaught mode in Unreal Tournament 2004. Whew, man, that's one of my favorite first person shooter game types, and I would love to see that played in like a competitive fashion sometime.
What is Onslaught mode in a brief summation? Can you describe it?
A brief summation, Unreal Tournament 2004, first-person shooter, lots of cool weapons, whatever. But each team had a base in different parts of the map, and then there were these nodes along on the map that linked together. So in order to be able to destroy the enemy's base, you had to grab all of the nodes that linked up to that. And there were generally a few different pathways you could take, so you didn't always have to just be fighting over the same point. You could choose to take a different point rather than fight the enemies at a specific point. And so once you created a line to the enemy's base, then you could attack their base. First team to destroy the other team's base wins. It was very fun and very strategic, and I really enjoyed it.
That sounds really fun, actually. I don't know much about the Unreal Tournament games at all. And are they still a thing?
No. Epic was making a new Unreal Tournament game. And it was like they were doing this weird like community development thing where they sort of put out the game in a couple of maps, and then they were and like some weapons, and then basically said to the community like, okay, this is yours now, do whatever you want with it. And then nobody really did anything with it. And so I think they shut it down pretty recently, but it was kind of cool. The graphics were really good, but it just didn't really scratch that itch. And I don't think that kind of game is what people are looking for these days. So like, because it didn't have any sort of progression or anything like that. It was just like you just get into the match, you find the weapons on the ground, kill each other, and then that's it.
And then they made another game where you get into the map, find the weapons on the ground, and kill each other.
Right.
Slightly more successftle.
Right. So a little bit more successful. It had more progress bars. See, that's the key to successful games. The more progress bars you have, the more successful your game will be.
I'm gonna make a game where you click and all that happens is a progress bar goes up. That's all I'm gonna do. And it's called Progress Bar Champions. That's what it's gonna be.
I think there is a game, like a parody game called, I think it's called Progress Quest.
Progress Quest?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's all it is. It's just progress bars going up, and it's kind of like almost like cookie clicker too, where you can like do things to make them go up faster, and like there's some like sort of fun strategy involved, but ultimately you're just watching progress bars go up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty strange, but back to Ratchet and Clank, the multiplayer was basically what you would expect out of the multiplayer of a Ratchet and Clank game. You run around, blowing each other up, having a great time. Oh, weapons could also upgrade over the course of a match too, so that was pretty cool. So if you were doing better and getting more kills, your weapon would upgrade, and then you would have the better weapons and stuff like that. Also, it had clans, just like Halo 2. See?
Whoa.
Those chumps over on Xbox spending too much money on things PS2 players got for free.
I don't appreciate. I mean, I'm going to side with the chumps here, okay?
Halo 2 was much better than Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, but it was still pretty fun.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I have one question for you about Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal's multiplayer. Mm-hmm. What character model were you? Were you all Ratchet and Clank, or were you like different characters from the game? There
were a lot of different characters from the game, and you could unlock different things too. So
that's fun. You got to have unlocks.
Yep.
It's the key to any game.
Yep, got to have unlocks. In 2012, Insomniac shut down the servers for Up Your Arsenal on PS2 to prep for the launch of the collection on PS3, which included online multiplayer for Up Your Arsenal. So the remakes multiplayer just got shut down a couple years ago. Actually, it was in February of 2018, so almost 2 years ago. But I'm kind of surprised it lasted that long because it was unchanged from the PS2 game, and games are just better and have evolved beyond that now. So I'm kind of surprised it lasted for 6 years like it did. But speaking of the collection, in 2012, Sony launched a PS3 collection of the first 3 Ratchet and Clank games on PS2. They're largely unchanged, but like a lot of those PS2 re-releases that were coming out around that time on PS3, but they added HD resolutions, widescreen support, trophies. Other than that, they're the same game, and that's fine. This is the best way to play those games. They did, time traveling back to 2005 now, they did release one more mainline Ratchet game on the PS2 called Ratchet Deadlocked. And this one came out less than a year after Up Your Arsenal in October of 2005, so they were really just cranking them out at this point. And I think Deadlocked suffered a little bit from that. So Deadlocked focused a little bit less on the platforming and the whimsical levels of the Ratchet games, the previous ones, and instead focused on the combat elements. So the game is set in sort of this like gladiator game show type thing called the Dread Zone, and Ratchet and his buddies have to like fight their way out. There's more to the plot there, but like honestly, this game wasn't really what fans were looking for at the time. I played it very briefly, but it was kind of disappointing. But I should go back and play it now because all these years later, I might be able to give it the chance to be the game that it is rather than the game I wanted it to be. It was not the game that I wanted it to be.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Tyler. It's like poetry.
Yeah.
It's like Ratchet and Clank poetry.
Yep. It also had online multiplayer, no subscription fees, which was shut down at the same time as Up Your Arsenal servers were shut down.
You didn't put the parentheses note that you wrote in the notes just now. You didn't say that out loud.
Oh yeah, sorry. Too. Let me. I'll read that sentence again. It also featured online multiplayer, again without subscription fees. Suck it, Xbots. Which was
thank you.
I thought I was maybe I was dogging on your Xbox too much. I don't want to make you sad.
It's okay. No, I'm just sitting here holding it, rocking back and forth while we talk.
I just assume that you're doing that most of the time we're recording this podcast anyway.
That's true. It's just different consoles each week. Hold whatever one it's going to be.
Yeah. Whichever one that I am dumping on, Mike is holding it, saying, shh, it's okay.
He doesn't really mean those things.
He doesn't mean it. You're number one in my heart. PlayStation.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Shh, it's okay, Sega Game Gear. He doesn't mean it.
So Deadlocked's PS3 servers remained online as long as Up Your Arsenal's PS3 servers did, shutting down in February of last year. RIP to those games.
We will miss you.
Yeah. The PS2 years did have a couple more Ratchet games. So there were ports of the PSP titles Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank. So Size Matters is a standard Ratchet and Clank game. It was a PSP game first and foremost when it came out, and then about a year later came out on the PlayStation 2. It was kind of a mix between Up Your Arsenal and Going Commando. So it has the structure of Going Commando's planets and missions, but then all the cool weapon upgrading that Up Your Arsenal has.
That seems like it could be cool.
It's actually very cool. So it's pretty simplistic as far as Ratchet games go because it was designed as a PSP game first and foremost. But as a portable version of Ratchet and Clank, it knocks it out of the park. The levels are smaller, the enemies are simpler, but it's still a ton of fun. And when you But when you like blow it up to put it on your TV to play on PS2 is where it really starts to suffer because those levels are very small. The enemies are a lot simpler than the other Ratchet games. It's really only worth playing on PS2 if you're a huge Ratchet and Clank fan and just don't want to miss a game. And I don't want to miss a game.
Because even when I dream of games, the sweetest games will never do.
So yeah, it's worth checking out just because it is fun on its own. But if you've played all the other ones as well, because it's just not as good as the rest of them. So it's not bad, but every other game is better than it. So that's Size Matters. The last game of the PS2 era was also a PSP game, and it's called Secret Agent Clank. This one is a bit different from other Ratchet and Clank games in that you only control Clank. So in the other Ratchet and Clank games, there were Clank sections where the player would play as just Clank, and they usually had to solve puzzles or something with Clank's abilities and his ability to control little gadget bots. They ran around doing different things. They were puzzle sections that were pretty fun. But in Secret Agent Clank, takes on more of an action hero role, and he has weapons of his own that deal out massive destruction. It's so cool. It follows Clank on his adventures as a secret agent, something he had become at the beginning of Up Your Arsenal, I think. And he's quite famous for being in this TV show where he's a secret agent. It's really just a big James Bond spoof, and it has some stealth sections. But it's pretty fun. But like Size Matters, it's really only worth checking out if you're a fan of the series. Critically, it's the worst of the bunch. But it's not a terrible game either. I mean, it's a pretty high bar. So if you're the worst of the Ratchet and Clank games, you're still doing okay, you know? It's not unplayable. It's just not very good. So I don't know. Check it out if you feel like it. It was fun as a PSP game, but again, it suffers the same thing when you put it on the big screen as a PS2 title. So that's it.
You know, to me, there's only one secret agent in my life.
And that's?
John Glames.
Yes, I was going to remember his name, and I was really hoping that you would say John Glames.
Think about him all the time.
Jay Bird and John Glames. So that's it. Those are the PS2 years of Ratchet and Clank. I'd like to continue on because some of the PS3 games are some of my favorite games of all time. I love all of the Ratchet and Clank games on PS3, but, well, not all of them. Full Frontal Assault was okay, and All for One was not great, but anyway, doesn't matter. We'll see. Maybe I'll cover those in another game. I'm not making any promises now. So here's a question, and this is a question for you, Mike, but also for the listeners as well. Do you like it when we cover things for several weeks in a row, or would you rather we break it up with other things in between? So like if I wanted to do a part 2 of Ratchet and Clank, would you prefer that come next week, or would you want to spread it out and like do it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
My thought is, what's the rush? You know, because like the reason we go back and forth, you and I, full disclosure to the listener, is we have lives and jobs, and life is busy. So I would be okay with taking a week, and then you jumping back into this the week after, you know, like every other week kind of thing like we're doing. Or if you really like want to go for it, we can just go for it. You know, I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I kind of like breaking it up as well. I think that works a little bit better, like especially for listeners who are like, if they're like, oh, I really don't care about Ratchet and Clank, and then it's like 2 weeks of Ratchet and Clank, and they're just skipping over us. Like, I feel bad, and you guys shouldn't have to do that. So we'll give you something good next week.
Yeah, next week we'll give you something good, and the pressure's on me now.
That's right. Mike, what have you been playing?
I have been playing, well, a lot of 7 Days to Die with my wonderful brother. I've been playing a lot of Destiny 2 with you, but I also downloaded and started Return to Arkham, the Batman Arkham Asylum remake for Xbox One, because it's free on Game Pass. And, I just love the mood.
I'm so excited for you to play these games.
Because I played Arkham City and I played Arkham Knight. I did not play Arkham Origins. And I know Arkham Origins is good. I just haven't done it yet. But Arkham Asylum, like the first one, it just feels so cool. It's so spooky.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. It's a perfect Halloween game.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's a very good Halloween game.
You know, it's Halloween. It's fun. It's not too scary, like the survival horror games on, like, not survival horror, but like just horror games in general on like computer, like Outlast and stuff. That's way too scary for me. I can't do it, but I can do Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I can be Batman all day. You know, I got gadgets. I'm gonna put in detective mode so I can see fingerprints, because that's how real life detectives work. They have detective mode.
They just turn on detective mode and then it just reconstructs the crime, and they can just watch it happen.
Exactly. Just like the world's greatest detective, Batman.
Yeah.
That's been really fun. What have you been playing?
I've been playing mostly Destiny 2. We played a whole bunch yesterday, and I played a bunch more today by myself. I finally got to the Fabled level or the Fabled rank, I guess. Rank is probably right, in competitive matchmaking. So I got my Luna's Howl, and I got my Recluse gun, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. And then I've just been kind of doing on the power grind, just doing stuff that gets me powerful so I can catch up with you because you're ahead of me on power level.
I'm so happy that we did it. We can play after this. I'm super excited. I love it. I'm loving the power grind. It's like my new favorite thing.
Yeah. So much fun.
And I have some stuff. We got some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We got some announcements, actually. And I realized, okay, so the first one, I got a tweet, and I didn't see it for a while because I didn't check. I was like out of town, didn't check Twitter as much, but Chris, that's it, is his name on Twitter. And he said, Mikola, did you see this announcement? And I didn't see the announcement, spoilers, but the announcement is that they're making a Game Boy clone.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's a Gizmodo article, and it's called an Analog Pocket, and it plays every single kind of cartridge flawlessly for Game Boy. And the way it does it is through not emulation, but it's a different kind of way to make. It's like using the original cartridge in a more efficient, better way is the easy way to describe it.
Yeah, they use like FPGAs or something.
Yeah, that's the term they use. So instead of emulating it, they just it has two FPGAs inside. One emulates classic handheld games that are Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and then the other one does Sega Game Gear, Atari Lynx, and the Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Oh, cool.
So it can play a bunch. And this thing comes out in this 2020, and it's $200. And I'm like, hey, if you're a fan of Game Boy, like I'm a fan of Game Boy, like this is definitely something you should look into. But also they have one for that already came out for the Mega SG, and it plays Sega Genesis and Sega Master System games, both of them. Yeah,
nice.
This company just makes it uses this FPGA technology to make really cool clone consoles that play old games, which I'm really, because that's how you got to keep these classic games alive, because those consoles don't last very long,
Yep, they don't last forever, that's for sure.
Oh man, but yeah, it was great. Thank you so much, Chris. His name's Chris. Should I give out his handle? I don't know how that is.
I don't know if it matters that much. I mean, people could just go on Twitter and find him, I suppose.
They could also just go on my Twitter and then find it, because I'm going to tell them what my Twitter is later. Also, we got a new review.
Yes.
Ooh. So this one on October 10th, 2019. It actually came out, though, like after we recorded the last one, unfortunately. So This is from Rude Days, 5 stars. Co-hosts have great chemistry with each other, and topics are very interesting, even having not played every console or video game they discuss. Also, possible suggestions for future shows. Have you guys ever thought about discussing the history of gaming publishers like EA and Activision? ? That's a really good idea.
That is a really good idea.
Gaming studios that have shut down, like Telltale Games, that's also a really good idea.
Yep.
Not sure how interesting they may be, and you have discussed them some when talking about the game consoles, so not real sure if there's more to tell or not. I feel like there's so much more to tell, Rude Days, and those are two great ideas. And thank you.
I'm a fan of both of those ideas.
Yeah, I actually wanted to kind of do Telltale. I might do Telltale this week. That's kind of because I was thinking about that and how much those games were, how cool those games are. And it's kind of a bummer what happened to that studio, and I think we should highlight how cool their games were.
Yeah. But
anywhoozle, as always, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can find Tyler on Twitter at SneakerElf, ELPH. You can find me on Twitter at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA. And that's the episode. Thank you, Tyler. I wish I had a PS2 now, or a PS3.
Yeah. Well,
play a little Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, that's the best way to play it is on the PS3.
Awesome. Well, I am going to now go watch this commercial where these guys blow up someone with a Ratchet and Clank gun. So, I'm going to live my life. But thank you so much for listening, and goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, Tyler.
Goodbye, Mike.